Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind howling, your heart pounding, fear screaming that you'll fall. Your feelings tell you to step back, to play it safe, to run. But something deeper, something unshakable, whispers, step forward, trust. That's faith. Not the fleeting rush of emotion, but the steady anchor that holds you when everything else is shaking. Faith and feelings, they're not the same, and confusing them can cost you your destiny. Let's unpack the raw, unfiltered truth about the difference, because this isn't just a concept, it's the key to living a life that moves mountains. Feelings are like the weather. They shift with the wind, the news, your coffee order getting messed up. One moment, you're on fire, ready to conquer the world, the next, you're drowning in doubt because life threw a curveball. Feelings are real, but they're not reliable. They're human, wired into us by God to experience joy, sorrow, love, fear. But they're not meant to lead. The enemy knows this. He'll twist your emotions, amplify your fears, and make you think that because you feel defeated, you are defeated. That's the trap. Feelings are loud, but they're not truth. Faith, on the other hand, is a rock. It's not swayed by the storm, the diagnosis, or the doubters. Faith doesn't care if you woke up feeling like a failure or a champion. It's rooted in what God says, not what you see or feel. Faith is choosing to believe God's promises when everything around you screams the opposite. It's not a warm fuzzy vibe, it's a decision, a stance, a refusal to let circumstances dictate your reality. People often think that when they don't feel good about something, they lack faith. Or, when they feel spiritually energized, they think they're walking in faith. But that's not the reality. The difference between faith and feelings is not just one of perception, it's a matter of life and death. It's the difference between living in victory or surrendering to the enemy's lies. Feelings are temporary. Faith is eternal. Feelings depend on circumstances, on the weather, on how well your day went, on the opinions of others. Faith, however, stands firm, grounded in the promises of God. Feelings tell you what you're going through right now. Faith tells you what is true, even when everything in your life seems to contradict it. The moment you confuse these two is the moment you start to live by emotion instead of the word. Feelings will tell you to run from your dreams, to quit when things get tough, to retreat when the storm comes. But faith, real faith, will keep you anchored, telling you to stand firm even when the wind howls and the waves crash. Let's be clear, feelings are not bad. God gave us emotions. They're part of what makes us human. But the enemy knows how to manipulate them. He knows how to turn our natural responses into weapons that paralyze us. He uses fear, doubt, and insecurity to prevent us from walking in the destiny God has for us. He whispers lies that say, "You're not good enough. You'll never make it," or "God isn't with you." And suddenly, your faith is overshadowed by the weight of your feelings. But here's the truth, your faith is not based on what you feel. It's based on what God has spoken. Faith doesn't wait for the feelings to catch up. It moves forward even when you're uncertain, even when you're scared, and even when the circumstances aren't lining up with what you've been promised. Take, for example, the story of Peter walking on water. Jesus calls him to step out of the boat and walk toward him. For a brief moment, Peter's faith was solid. He stepped out, eyes fixed on Jesus, and he did the impossible, he walked on water. But then, something happened. Peter shifted his focus. He noticed the wind. He felt the waves. His feelings of fear and doubt crept in, and suddenly, his faith faltered. He began to sink. That moment, that shift in focus, is what happens to many of us. When we walk by faith, we keep our eyes on Jesus. But when we start focusing on the storm, on the doubt, on the feeling that it's not going to work out, that's when we begin to sink. The good news is, Jesus didn't let Peter drown. He reached out and pulled him back up. And in that moment, he asked, "Why did you doubt?" This isn't just about Peter's failure, this is a lesson about how faith and feelings don't mix. Jesus was teaching Peter that no matter how strong the storm, if you keep your eyes on him, your faith will keep you standing. Feelings will always fluctuate. Faith, when anchored in God, remains firm. Faith doesn't need to be felt to be effective. Think about Abraham. He was promised a son, but for years, there was no sign of fulfillment. His feelings must have fluctuated from hope to doubt, from excitement to discouragement. But Abraham's faith was not built on his emotions. It was built on what God had said. He trusted God's promises, and when he couldn't see how, he still moved forward. And in the end, God's promise was fulfilled. But what about us today? We're told that faith moves mountains. But do we really believe that? Or do we treat faith like wishful thinking, something that's nice to have when everything is going our way? Do we act as if faith is only for the days when everything falls into place? Faith isn't about being happy all the time or pretending everything is fine. It's about choosing to believe that God is always faithful. No matter what you feel, the woman with the issue of blood knew this. She had spent all her money on doctors, and after 12 years, she was still sick. She had every reason to feel defeated. But her faith wasn't based on her feelings. It was based on the truth that Jesus could heal her. And so, she pressed through the crowd, knowing that if she could just touch the hem of his garment, she would be healed. What happened next is astounding. Her faith reached out and touched the supernatural. Jesus didn't have to see her or even speak to her. Her faith alone activated the healing. It wasn't a passive belief. It was an active, aggressive faith that knew God would move even before the miracle appeared. This is how faith operates. It doesn't wait for confirmation, it moves before the proof. This is where the rubber meets the road. Faith isn't passive. It's not sitting around waiting for God to drop a miracle in your lap while you wrestle with your emotions. Faith acts. It speaks. Jesus said, "If you have faith and do not doubt, you will say to this mountain, be removed and cast into the sea, and it will be done." Matthew 21 verse 21. Faith doesn't whisper nice thoughts, it commands. It doesn't wait for the stars to align, it moves the stars. When you speak to your mountain, you're not begging God to act, you're declaring what He's already promised. But here's the kicker, faith requires grit. It's not always instant. Elijah prayed for rain 7 times before a cloud appeared. 7 times. He didn't quit after the first prayer got no answer. He didn't let the dryness of the moment shake his belief in God's promise. Faith persists. It pushes through delays, through silence, through feelings of frustration. It sees the cloud before it forms. It trusts the harvest before the rain falls. Feelings will always tag along on the journey. Yes, they're part of being human. But they're not the driver. Faith is. When you let feelings lead, you're like a ship tossed by every wave. When faith leads, you're anchored, unshakable, even when the storm rages. Job proved this. He lost everything, his wealth, his kids, his health. His feelings were crushed, he was in agony. Yet he declared, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." Job 13 verse 15. That's faith. It's not denying the pain, it's refusing to let the pain define the promise. Here's the practical side. Faith isn't just believing in your head, it's moving with your hands, your feet, your voice. It's praying boldly, declaring God's promises. Stepping out even when you're scared. It's telling the mountain to move, not hoping it'll shift someday. And when you move in faith, feelings follow. You don't wait for courage to feel good, you act, and courage shows up. You don't wait for peace to settle, you trust, and peace comes. The enemy wants you to stay stuck in your feelings. He wants you to think that because you're afraid, you can't move forward. That's because you're discouraged, God's not working. But faith flips the script. It says, I feel afraid, but I'm moving anyway. I feel discouraged, but I'm trusting anyway. Faith isn't the absence of doubt, it's the choice to believe God over the doubt. So, here's the call, stop letting feelings run the show. They're terrible GPS. Let faith take the lead. Anchor yourself in God's word, not your emotions. Speak to your mountains. Step out on the water. Press through the crowd. Persist in prayer. Faith doesn't just change how you feel, it changes what you see. It moves the impossible into reality. And when you live by faith, not feelings, you step into the life God designed for you, one where mountains move, storms bow, and promises come to pass. That's the truth about faith and feelings, unshakable, unfiltered, and straight from the heart of God's word. Here at the heart of His word, we're all about anchoring ourselves in the promises that never fail, no matter how loud the storm gets. So, keep your eyes on Jesus, let faith lead the way, and watch those mountains move. If this spoke to you, share it, subscribe, and join us as we dive deeper into the truth that sets us free. Until next time, stay rooted in His word and keep walking in faith.